Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for this debate. The topic we will be discussing is whether or not gift giving and accepting gifts is unethical or ethical. The pro side will be pro gift giving and consists of Chris, who will be acting as the stater and the prover, and Allison, who will be acting as the attacker. The con side is against gift giving and consists of Tori, who will be acting as the stater, Sorta, who will be acting as the attacker, and myself, Miranda, who will be acting as the prover and the moderator. So we'll be using a formal debate format, and one side will present their stater and prover statements, and then the opposite side will have the opportunity for their attacker to speak. So let's now hear from Chris, who will be starting out the debate.
Hello. All right. So our first statement for the pro side is that exchanging gifts is not an inherently bad or coercive act. Primarily, gifts are meant to strengthen the ties between two parties and secure alliances for the future. And that was cited by all three of my sources. So Park in 1998, Compton 2007, and Roos in 2008. So now for some support on that statement. Gift giving, it facilitates cooperation and respect, and also continued interdependence between individuals that exchange gifts. And again, that's cited by all three of my sources here. So whenever you give a gift, you're more likely to cooperate with that person to help them to achieve a mutual goal, or just pay them a favor. And you're more likely to continue to interact with them in the future. Gifts are a stabilizing factor in the unpredictable interactions with other humans, and they serve to gain emotional security or to fortify against risk by forging alliances. So it's more of an evolutionary thing that gifts evolved out of. So people want survival advantage. You gain advantage by having strong relationships, and that helps you to, thrive in the world. Now, Compter cited George Simmel in 1908, wrote that feelings of faithfulness and gratitude develop in any kind of group that has a certain duration or has been around for a certain while, irrespective of its initially connecting motives. So mutual loyalty like this is often supported by gift-giving behaviors. And there's examples of reciprocity or exchanging favors in the animal kingdom. You can see it with chimpanzees who, groom each other and share food, but also with orangutans and other animals in the animal kingdom. And gifts in their ideal form are not, not coercive inherently. Ideally, they're going to be altruistic. So coming from a selfless place, not necessarily a self-motivated place, not, trying to get something out of someone. Ideally, they're just a token of appreciation.
We will now hear from Sorta, our con attacker.
Thank you. Our BACB has decided to prohibit accepting gift of any kind from client. It is very cut and dry, so there is no need for any interpretation. The code ethic 1.06, multiple relationship and conflict of interest, is our code of ethic. As a BCBA, we need to adhere to our code of ethic. Multiple relationship for a behavior analyst could arise through accepting gift. This is a very concerning behavior or situation, because when we have multiple relationship, it could impair our objectivity in judgment. The code multiple relationship prohibit accepting gift so that we can draw a clear line between personal and professional conduct. There is an example of cases involving accepting gift that often end up badly, even to the point of lawsuit. The textbook gives an example in page 73, talking about one graduate student who is working for a big agency. And actually, the agency has a policy against accepting gift. However, under pressure of the family trying to give gift, the supervisor of the graduate student told her to accept the gift. Well, months later, something went bad. The family sued the company. Even the graduate student was implicated because she had acted against company policy. So it is advisable that we adhere to the code of ethics by not accepting any gift and for the betterment of our relationship with the client.
We will now hear our common stater and prover statements from Tori and myself.
The first point we will hear from the con side is regarding BACB Ethical Codes 1.06, 4.10, and 7.02. As BCBAs, we have a responsibility to do no harm, which entails avoiding situations that can be damaging. We also have a responsibility to be faithful to our clients and treat them all equally.
So one reason that gift giving is unethical is because it puts some core principles at risk. The first principle is do no harm, and as Tori stated, it comes from guidelines 1.06, 4.10, and 7.02, which direct BCBAs to avoid potentially harmful situations. So giving and accepting gifts can result in harmful situations such as multiple relationships. The next core principle at risk is being faithful. This includes treating all clients the same, giving the same respect to everyone, and treating everyone equally. Giving and accepting gifts goes against being faithful because it is giving certain clients preference because they are giving gifts. And then the third core principle at risk is the responsible conduct of behavior analysts, which is the first section of the BACB guidelines. This includes knowing boundaries, maintaining professionalism, and maintaining integrity. A BCBA cannot maintain a professional relationships if gifts are being given and accepted. This goes against the ethical codes, which does not help a BCBA maintain integrity. Behavior analysts should adhere to the ethical codes and instill general consistency across settings. Another key issue comes from Gehrig in 2004, and he states that giving gifts generates the need for reciprocity. This means that clients will expect special treatment and analysts will feel a willingness to please their clients and give them that special treatment. Accepting gifts reinforces gift-giving behavior, and so this is likely that the client will continue to give gifts and the analyst will continue to accept gifts, leading to unprofessional relationships. We will now hear from Allison, the pro attacker.
Hello. I want to start off by saying that just because multiple relationships are one of the top areas of concern, that it doesn't automatically mean that it's going to be a harmful process in every case, or that it can't even be argued for. There really isn't a lot of research out there that tells us the specific effect gift giving has on the progress of a client. And they don't really clearly define what they consider a gift to be. It could be a bought gift, or it could be a picture of a drawing. There's a whole broad spectrum of what can be considered a gift, and some gifts are different than others. There are benefits to gift giving, just as Chris stated. It's meant to forge an alliance and strengthen the relationship by gaining trust and establish that rapport between a therapist and a client. And what the plan is for one client may be different from another client. So each case has to be looked at differently and not always as favoritism.
Chris will now be giving us the pro, stater, and prover statements.
All right. So for our next point, moving on here, the pro side says that different cultures have different norms for giving and receiving gifts, and largely this is what will determine the opportunity to exchange a gift with someone, or the reason why they might be buying it for you in the first place. And this is cited across all our sources. So Park in 1998, Compter 2007, and Roos in 2008. Okay, so for some support on this statement, gift giving is highly variable with regard to occasions for giving gifts, the network of gift exchange partners, and the types of gifts that are sought or purchased. And this is largely dictated by cultural norms. So who, what, how, when, why a gift might be exchanged is all relevant to where you're from, how you were raised, these sort of things, like the values that you have. So in collectivistic cultures, or like, I don't know, Eastern cultures, gift giving is a much more commonplace occurrence. So in those sorts of cultures, it's not your own individual merits, it's, you know, how you're connected to other people. And so this influences the way that society functions. So reciprocity is going to be a tenet that these sorts of societies will function with. So giving gifts, exchanging favors, and that sort of stuff helps to solidify your working relationship with someone. So in a collectivistic culture, it's going to help someone to conform to societal norms and to save face. And then through giving gifts at appropriate junctures, people are able to avoid shame. And the results of an analysis of Korean versus American gift sharing norms done by Park in 1998 found that American gift giving tends to be more on the altruistic side of things, so that is selfless side of things, reserved mostly for friends and family. So this is just a couple of examples of how societal norms can influence someone's gift giving behavior and their motivations for doing so. So in a collectivistic culture, you're going to have a lot more opportunities, a lot more just general reasons to be giving and exchanging gifts, because, and you know, from wherever you're from, that's how you I don't know, garner social favor from society. That's how you move up in the world, is by connecting with people and maintaining those relationships. Whereas here in America and, you know, Western cultures, it's more, you know, rugged individualism. It's, you know, I'm evaluated based on my own merits and what I'm able to do individually, but that's not how it works everywhere, and that's why it can be kind of a relative to perspective sort of thing.
Sorda will now be giving her con attacker statement.
Thank you. Speaking about norm, societal norm or cultural norm, we as a BCBA, we need to create a norm that adhere to our code of ethic. The norm for our ethic is not accepting gift. We can explain to the family and to our client what our code of ethics are and why we have to have this in place. It is for their protection. It is to protect our relationship. Feeling can be saved by providing information about the code and gift giving before it is started. Accepting gift can cause hurt feeling when other therapists do not accept the same treatment. We have the responsibility to protect our client and to conduct our behavior always in professional manner. The code of ethic is there to protect it. We have to explain this to our client, and it cannot be stressed more than what our textbook has done, that we must comply.
We'll now hear from our con stater and prover, Tori and myself.
The next point we will discuss on the con side is the gray area that comes with gift giving. We believe there's no such thing as a pure gift, and that gifts are always given with a reason. This can take on a cyclical effect where both parties engage in back and forth gift giving that does not end.
As Tori said, there's no such thing as a pure gift. There are always additional factors, and there are always feelings and motives involved. So according to Ashworth in 2013, gift giving is often associated with a celebration such as a wedding or a holiday. And in order for a BCBA to maintain their professionalism, they should not be celebrating these events with clients, as it is not professional. So there's always a reason to give a gift, and there's always a response to that gift. Consequences can be intentional or unintentional, but no matter what the consequence, it's never worth weakening a client relationship or strengthening it beyond a professional level. And this is according to Ruth, Otness, and Brunel in 1999. Ashworth goes on to say that gifts increase bonds, which can cross the line between therapist-client relationships to one with unprofessional feelings. So we're going to look at a chart so we can better understand. As you can see in the beginning, a gift may strengthen or affirm a relationship, and this will give positive emotions. But as we look down further on the chart, it can weaken or sever a relationship, causing feelings of burden or insult. And then it can also cause threat. So during the weakening stage, the relationship is not completely depleted, but it is harmed. And in the severing stage, the relationship is so harmed that it is completely abolished. And that's not something that we want for a client-analyst relationship. So Ashworth says that a number of functional anthropologists have argued emphatically that the idea of a free gift with no obligation on the part of the recipient just does not work. This means that the client will always expect something, and the analyst will always feel that they have to provide something more. We'll now hear from Allison, the pro attacker.
So once again, I really want to establish the importance of needing more research and establishing the effect that gift giving has on the client's progress. There are many things that can blur the lines in a client-therapist relationship. Hugging is one of those things that is very similar to gift giving that can really muddy the waters and make an unclear line as to where the relationship is. But once again, hugging can be used as a reinforcer, especially with those clients who have severe sensory needs. Working for a prize toy that you bought, that the BCBA may have bought for the client. We need more clear lines on what's actually considered a gift and what isn't considered a gift. Because if, accepting a drawing as opposed to dealing with a tantrum, picking your battles, or these small things like hugging or accepting a drawing, we need more clear lines on what that is actually considered. And it's really important to always be conscious of where you are in a relationship, no matter what the situation, no matter what the client is, no matter what the situation is. You should always be conscious of the boundaries you have set and be cautious of whatever behavior you're engaging in. Denying a gift can also be detrimental to a relationship, depending on the culture. I mean, here it may be okay to say, no, I can't accept this gift. But in other cultures, the client, if they're from a different culture or have a different culture, they can feel a lot of shame or just embarrassment from being denied the gift. And there is a lot of culture, but that may not be what it is in other cultures around the world. So really just establishing what a gift is and understanding that many things in what we do muddy the waters, not just gift giving, and learning how to organize each area.
Chris will now give his pro stater and prover statements.
All right, welcome back all. Okay, so for our next point on the pro side, it's that reciprocity is not morally good or bad in and of itself. So giving and exchanging gifts or the act of returning favors isn't necessarily inherently good or bad. So it can take both forms. Now on the one side, you have the golden rule. So that says do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. So don't be a jerk, in other words. And then on the other side of that, you have an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So you do unto me, you killed my father, so I'm going to kill your father, or something like that. It can go both ways. It's not inherently one way or the other. It slides back and forth between those two extremes. So it depends on the circumstances, depends on the individuals present, and depends on the values that they ascribe to. Now, for some support on this point, reciprocity can exist without morality, which is to say that exchanging favors doesn't need morality to function, but that morality there can be no morality without reciprocity. And this was cited from Roos in 2008. So that second part of the statement just means that in order for morality to function, you need to come to terms with an agreed set of standards or principles by more than one person in order for that to function, really. So people have to agree, hey, we're not going to go around killing a guy for, looking at me funny. And whenever they make that agreement and honor that agreement, then morality functions. But without reciprocity in society, we wouldn't have that sort of dynamic possible. So reciprocity is going to be the feeling of gratitude that when we receive a gift, that serves as a moral force to return the gift and reciprocate. And again, that's not inherently bad. That ideally is going to be how you establish and maintain relationships, is by giving and exchanging gifts or favors. And it's highly relative. So it just depends on your perspective on the matter. So someone might see you, showing up 5 minutes early every day as a gift in and of itself, but you just think it's, being professional. It's just the way that you operate. So you wouldn't consider it a gift where they might. And then even in ABA therapy, reciprocity is going to be at play. So even though it's supposed to be cut and dry, we get paid through the insurance company and we provide a service because we continue to get paid. That's a commodity or market exchange kind of relationship, which is cut and dry. But the people's desires to give gifts to ABA providers with whom they've had an established relationship probably comes from a feeling of indebtedness to the individual and a desire to balance the scales with a token of thanks. So in a collectivistic culture, that might be just their way to save face, is by giving you this gift and having you accept it. And that's just the way that their culture has functioned, and the way that they were probably raised and had that instilled into them. So again, it's not necessarily bad or self-motivated. It's something that was meant to establish the relationship and make it stronger. And it's my personal suspicion that people get that sort of indebtedness, or that feeling of indebtedness, from people going above and beyond. So anyone can show up and do the bare minimum at their job and just show up, just fill out paperwork, not smile or have fun with it. But whenever somebody shows up and they're exceptional at their job, is where people really appreciate it more, I think. So that's where I suspect a lot of people feel like they need to give us gifts, because we are able to elicit a side of their child that they maybe didn't believe existed, or we're teaching them this thing that they've been working on. Potty training can be a nightmare, and we finally get that kid to use the toilet after 3 years of trying. Like, that's where people really appreciate stuff. So no, without the moral obligation implied in gratitude or reciprocity, there would be no basis for trust and endurable social relationships. And that's from Compter 2007. Reciprocity is the glue that holds our social relationships together.
Sorda will now give her next attacker statement.
Talking about reciprocity, the relationship that the client and the therapy have, it should be where the therapy is giving a service to the client, not the other way around. The reciprocity that Chris talked about, talking about commodity, is always behind the scene, because we are paid by the insurance, so there is no actual exchange of money, because through the insurance we are being paid. The transfer of money for service is not upfront, more of behind the scene. So there should not be any feeling of being owed to us. The therapist, we have to always put professional conduct at all times. And when the client feels like they need to express gratitude, it can be expressed in different way, not just by giving out a gift. As a therapist, we can tell the family that we will accept feedback or word of affirmation. How can we do our job better? How can we help more? Or how is our work being evaluated in their life? How much different that we have impact in their life. That is more or better gift than the actual monetary gift. When talking about reciprocity, we come to a point where we don't know where it's going to end. It's this going back and forth. I'm giving you this, you're giving me back something. It just make it difficult. The balance is becoming not equal when somebody give you more gift and then you cannot pay it back the same way. There are many ways to express gratitude, not just by giving out gift. And we have to mindful of our action, mindful of how our behavior will affect our future service to the client. And that is why accepting gift is being discouraged in our course as a therapist or as BCBA, and we have to uphold that at all times as our principal guide.
We will now hear from our con stater and prover, Tori and myself.
The final point we will discuss on the con side is the slippery slope effect that gift giving has. As we stated earlier, gift giving often takes on a cyclical effect. Gift giving also can progress from a small exchange of items to a large exchange of more substantial items or services. This can compromise the professional relationship that is expected of a BCBA.
According to Brown and Trangsrud in 2008, the slippery slope metaphor hypothesizes a progression of behaviors in which well-intentioned boundary crossings progress over time into major violations that are harmful to clients and place the therapeutic process in jeopardy. This means that boundary crossing may start small, but as behavior continues, the boundary crossings will get more serious. Gifts may start off small, such as a cup of coffee, but may grow into something bigger with bigger gifts and more meaning, which leads to unprofessional relationships. Brown and Trangsrud go on to say that professional boundaries mark the limits, rules, and parameters of ethical practice. So professionals are to identify their professional boundary dilemmas and fix them as soon as they realize they are occurring. Gift giving is a conflict in the therapeutic process in that gift giving is not a part of the typical practices and can be harmful. So we're going to look at another chart here. So as you can see, with a low level of significance and a low level of ethical concern, there's minimal ethical risk. However, when we go to a high level of significance and a high level of ethical concern, there's a high level of ethical concern, so that means there's a risk of an ethical violation. So we go down. Again, the low level of significance and the low level of ethical concern do not lead to a big dilemma, in that it can be a small gift and you can choose to accept or not accept the gift. And then it goes to the high level of significance and the high level of ethical concern, which leads to more questioning and more confusion about the relationship. And at this point, it's harder to get out of this unprofessional relationship as the gifts are bigger and you've gone too far. So now that means that crossing boundaries by giving gifts may result in bigger violations, further jeopardizing the professional relationship. So Allison will now give us her pro-attacker statement.
So to discard of gift giving as a whole really takes away the opportunity for a BCBA or a therapist to use a gift specifically bought for that client because they know that client may like cars, so you get these cars as a reinforcer. Some children do not have a lot of motivating objects, so they need the BCBA. It is their responsibility to create motivation for their client to learn. And as effective as reinforcement has been in ABA and the emphasis on it, there needs to be more research done on the positives that can come of using a gift as a reinforcer. I think there is a really big difference between accepting a really expensive gift from a client as opposed to accepting a small free gift from a child, like a drawing, or giving a hug or accepting a hug, which can be deemed as gifts in some circumstances. And ABA is conducted on a very individualistic level. The most successful intervention will not work on every child. So deciding that gift giving as a whole is going to bring harm in every situation moves away from respecting individual factors of every case. Any idea, any boundary that is set, anything with good intentions can be taken to the extreme if not managed cautiously. So as long as there's awareness and conscientiousness of the boundaries that have been set, negative consequences may not come around, but good consequences may come around from these cases.
Chris will now be giving us his closing con statement and pro statement.
There we go. All right. So in closing here, I just want you guys to remember that ideally, gift giving is going to be an altruistic process. So it's not inherently good or bad. Ideally, it's coming from a place where that's not motivated by selfish aims. So it's intended for strengthening bonds between two individuals. It's meant to be the glue that holds relationships together. So the cycle of reciprocity potentially is never going to end unless the relationship ends, or unless you want the relationship to end, at which case you reach the end point. So gift exchange can communicate a broad spectrum of emotions. This goes from things like respect, appreciation, or even passive aggression. In the paper that I have comparing Korean and American gift giving culture, in collectivistic societies, because they have to give so many gifts, can sometimes be passive aggressive whenever they're exchanging gifts because they have to give so many. So animals also exchange favors or services with each other, and those who do not give or receive are shunned from the group. So this is more of an evolutionary advantage in giving gifts and exchanging favors, because it helps you to thrive in your environment. So reciprocity is a powerful bonding tool, and it's found in nature, it's found in people, it's found all over the place. All sorts of stuff functions on reciprocity. Gift giving functions on reciprocity, but societal norms dictate how much this is actually at play. So depending on where you're from and how you were raised, different cultures are going to have different views of what's appropriate. Just as a side note here is that in a business paradigm, commodity or market exchange, which again is kind of how ABA is supposed to function based on the ethical compliance codes. Yeah, even though that's supposed to be cut and dry, it's commodity and market exchange business in general with their advertising is continuing to like brand their products, that is, make distinct distinctions between their product and other products. And the more that businesses individualize their products, the more that they allow you to customize, the murkier the line between a commodity and a gift is going to be. So the more you can personalize something, the more, like if you build it from the ground up, then that's more closely resembling a gift than it is a business product. And ABA is an extremely personal service. So as such, it has several of the hallmark characteristics of a gift just by the process of individualizing services to fit a client's needs.
Tori will now be giving us the con closing statements.
We have now heard from both sides, and we conclude that there are many reasons to oppose gift giving in a professional relationship. As BCBAs, we have clear guidelines to adhere to that allow us to maintain the success of our work. Without these guidelines, navigating the professional relationship that is so important between a BCBA and their clients would be impossible. These guidelines provide us with many relevant codes when it comes to gift giving. These codes tell us to do no harm to our clients, which we now know that gift giving can indeed be harmful to treatment. These codes also tell us we need to be faithful to our clients, which includes avoiding special treatment, which is sometimes inevitable with gift giving. There are proper and polite ways to decline gifts. One of these ways is to provide your clients alternatives to gift giving. Feedback and friendly words can be just as effective. There are practical alternatives to gift giving that can supplement the act of gift giving without having to cross any boundaries. By being proactive and upfront with our clients about our ethical guidelines and why we cannot and should not accept gifts can ensure we are doing the best we can to avoid harming our clients' relationships. The professional relationship is sacred in our field, and the slippery slope of gift giving is just not worth the risk. The pro side says that gift giving is the glue that holds relationships together. We believe that the relationship between client and BCBA is stronger without gift giving, and forming relationships without the need for exchanging gifts is for the best interest of all parties. The pro side also stated that everything can be taken to the extreme, including gift giving. We feel that setting the standard from the beginning and not allowing the lines to be blurred is the most productive approach to avoiding the risk of an extreme scenario.
Thank you all again for joining us for this debate.